Hey friends, welcome back to Better on Purpose. I'm really glad you're here. This week, I wasn't struggling to come up with an episode. If anything, I had the opposite problem. I just got home from 4 days as a mentor at youth summer camp. My voice is a little scratchy because of it, and my journal is overflowing. There are pages of stories, moments that made me laugh, moments that challenged me, moments that reminded me why I love working with young people, and moments that I know I'll carry with me for a long time. At first, I wasn't sure I wanted this to be my actual episode, not because camp wasn't incredible. It absolutely was. It was loud and colorful and energetic and exhausting in all the best ways. There were team chants and inside jokes and meaningful conversations, genuine encouragement, and the kind of community that reminds you what can happen when people choose to show up for one another. Watching students build friendships and grow in confidence and become just a little more comfortable being themselves was actually a gift. And the more I reflected after coming home, the more I realized camp wasn't actually the story I wanted to tell today. The story actually started before the bus ever left the parking lot. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to create an entire narrative before you've even lived the experience? We predict conversations before they've happened. We assume how people are going to respond. We convince ourselves we already know how something is going to feel. And before reality ever gets a chance to speak, we've already decided how the story ends. Something I'm learning lately is that anxiety is an incredible storyteller. It takes one, uncertainty, and quietly builds an entire narrative around it. It fills in blanks that don't actually have answers yet. It convinces us we know how people are going to respond, whether we'll fit in, whether we'll belong, whether our presence will matter. It writes endings before we've even lived one chapter. And the hard part is sometimes we believe it. The morning camp started, I sat in the back of the parking lot for about 15 minutes before I made my way to meet the rest of the group. Not because I didn't want to go. I most definitely did want to go. I had actually really been looking forward to camp for months, even the last year since last year's summer camp ended. But I was carrying far more than my suitcase that morning. I was carrying some uncertainty, some unanswered questions, and really second guessing myself. And if I'm honest, I'd already started writing a story about what the weekend was going to be like. Looking back, I know it wasn't camp that I was, dare I say, afraid of. I love it there. And the people I was going with have my whole heart. I think I was afraid of the story I'd already written about what this year's camp experience might be with me coming out of a season that's been really rough for me on a personal level. So I lingered in the parking lot for a bit. And the funny thing is, I don't think that the parking lot belongs only to me. I think we've all sat in one. Maybe yours isn't an actual parking lot. Maybe it's sitting in your car before work, walking into a family gathering after a relationship has changed, or starting a new job, or going back to the gym, scheduling that therapy appointment, starting a new business, trying again after disappointment. Whatever it looks like, I think we all have moments where we just sit a little longer because we're trying to predict what's waiting on the other side of the door. And I've started wondering, how much of life do we miss because we mistake the story in our head for reality? Our minds are incredibly good at filling in the blanks. The problem is they're not always accurate. Over those 4 days that I was at camp, I found myself laughing harder than I expected, having conversations I also did not expect, feeling encouraged in ways I didn't expect, and finding opportunities to encourage other people too. The weekend, it didn't erase every question I walked in with. It didn't magically resolve every uncertainty, but it reminded me that questions don't always have to disappear before we lean in to participate. One of the things I kept thinking about while I was there was how experiences like camp aren't meaningful because of just one speaker or one leader or one big, huge moment. They're meaningful because a whole community chooses to show up. Some people spend months planning. Others quietly keep everything running behind the scenes. And there are people who naturally make everyone laugh while someone else notices the student who's standing by themselves, or one person asks a thoughtful question while another offers encouragement at exactly the right moment. There could be someone who creates an environment where another person finally feels safe enough to open up and be themselves. On their own, those moments might seem really ordinary. Together, though, they can change someone's life. And I realize that's really what Better on Purpose has always meant to me, is not becoming perfect, not having everything figured out, and definitely not believing we have to change the world all by ourselves. It's actually a much simpler question. How can I leave the people and places around me just a little better than I found them? That's a question that I constantly come back to. Sometimes the answer might be through a meaningful conversation. Sometimes it's offering encouragement. Sometimes it's simply slowing down long enough to notice someone who feels overlooked. And sometimes it's just showing up. I've also realized something else, that showing up isn't always about having something to give. Sometimes we show up because someone else needs encouragement. Other times we show up because we're the ones who need to be reminded that we aren't carrying everything alone. Most of the time, it's both. I went into camp hoping the students would leave feeling seen. What I didn't expect was to leave feeling seen myself. And that might have been one of the biggest gifts I brought home, because healthy community doesn't work in just one direction. It isn't one person constantly pouring while everyone else receives. Sometimes we're the encourager. Other times we're the one who needs someone to remind us we're not alone. There are seasons when we're leading and others when we're simply trying to find our own footing. And somewhere in all of that, we get the chance to help each other grow. So as I drove home, I kept thinking about that parking lot from day one, the one where I almost let the story in my head keep me from experiencing everything that came after. And it made me wonder, how many parking lots are we sitting in right now? Not literal ones. The conversation we've already decided won't go well. The opportunity we've convinced ourselves we're not qualified for. The relationship we've assumed is too far gone. The place we've already decided we don't belong. And maybe this week, instead of believing every story anxiety hands us, we simply give reality a chance to speak for itself. Because the world doesn't usually change through one giant moment. It changes because someone chooses to show up. Maybe they offer encouragement when it's needed most. Maybe they decide to listen instead of assuming. Maybe they step into the room even though they're uncomfortable, or they become the safe place someone else didn't know they needed. Most of those moments won't be celebrated. They probably won't go viral, and chances are we'll never fully know the impact they had. But that doesn't make them any less meaningful. So wherever your parking lot is this week, I hope you'll take a step forward before fear finishes writing the story for you. Because sometimes the life we're hoping for isn't waiting for us to become more confident. It might be waiting for us to just get out of the car. So I just want to say thanks for joining me for that little snippet of my camp experience and what I learned from it. Thanks for spending a little of your day with me. And until next time, keep choosing to be better on purpose, because how you show up matters. See you next time, friends.